to Bloody Good Horror, covering the best and worst of the horror genre since Halloween 2007. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello, everybody, and welcome in to Bloody Good Horror. Tonight, we will be reviewing A Cure for Wellness. My name is Eric. I'll be your host for this evening. Joining me first up, web developer and editor-in-chief over at bloodygoodhorror.com. His name is Mark.
Why, hello there.
He showed up on time today, so he gets introduced first.
Yeah,
No.
I was 10 minutes early.
Heyo. Next up on the site, published author of horror fiction and co-host of the Instamatic. His name is Casey.
Hello.
I couldn't decide who was next.
Were you momentarily confused because you said site instead of podcast?
Just having a stroke. And last up tonight on the show, he drinks beer, he runs marathons, he loves Disney more than a human being should. His name is Joe.
Just vomit all over my sweater, mom's spaghetti.
That's right. I'm pretty excited tonight, guys. We are back on YouTube. The man cannot hold us down.
The tubes.
We've got to keep on moving.
Unless that man is one John Schnars, then he can hold Derek down anytime he wants.
Oof.
All right, I'll accept that. So yeah, we are back streaming live in video and 1080p's for the Patreon people. So welcome back if you've been missing your live stream action. And we're gonna review A Cure for Wellness. Schnars is out, which is a bummer because A, he's in this movie, and B, it pretends to be fancy anyway, so it would have been nice to have him here, but alas, you can't have everything you want in life, Mark.
You could have just said he wasn't on the show because he's doing press for this movie.
I feel like Schnars likes to not be on the show just to teach me hard life lessons, like just about how you can't always have what you want, but sometimes you get what you need, that kind of thing.
He's not going to give you the John you want. He's going to give you the John you need.
Right.
Eric, don't lie. You know it's still hard.
It is.
It's still hard.
Yeah. What else we got, Mark? What's going on at bloodygoodhorror.com?
Oh my god. Well, we got new reviews every single day. And we also have our book club submissions that are going on. So if you are not currently a member of the BGH book club, you should go and either search for us on Goodreads, so search for Bloody Good Horror on Goodreads, or I believe Joe linked to the book club from our Instagram. So it's instagram.com/.
Sounds like something I'd do.
Yeah, totally. And we're giving away a bunch of copies of Anya Allborn's book, whose name is escaping me right now. God damn it. Yeah, and it's great. So all you have to do is become a member of the book club and then comment on the post, and that's it.
Yeah, it's Women in Horror Month, Mark.
It is Women in Horror Month.
How does it feel that you're finally being celebrated in horror?
That was a really bad joke. Yeah, it's the name of the book is The Devil Crept In by Anya Allborn.
Very nice.
The devil crept in?
That's kind of what I thought you said also.
The Devil Crept In.
That's
The
what I
devil
heard.
crept in. And then the rest of the story is just about things that crept in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Day 27. Fuck it.
The devil crept in a hat.
So we're gonna pick a winner at the end of this month, and we're giving away 5 copies. So you've got a slightly better chance of winning if you get in there and get your name in. And also, while you're there, join the book club and read all the books. I believe CC's posted the schedule for the rest of the year. So if you are bookish and you like homework, we've got your books to read.
That's great.
We can't guarantee that we're going to give you pizza for reading the books, though.
I finished the second wrestling book in that series, and I'm still trying to finish 1984, man. Andy totally called it. There's a point about 3/4 way through where you hit a book within a book that it just like is a little interminable at this point, but we'll see.
Is that like a video within a video and then you die in 7 days?
Yeah, basically. Next week, though, this is very exciting. We are going to finally get to see Get Out.
Yay.
Get out.
Go on, get!
here's a question for. So I'm looking at. We've got this ongoing thing where I'm writing my year-end list.
Mhm.
You know, before the end of the year. Are we counting? We're gonna review Kong Skull Island, right? But are we counting that as a horror movie in the year-end stuff? That's my question.
That comes out. I'm assuming by John's standards, we will not be counting that. But that also comes out the weekend that we all might be together in the city so nice they named it twice.
Wow. Okay. Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And they didn't we do Godzilla though, and didn't we count Godzilla in our lists?
Potentially. Yeah, we definitely did Godzilla, and I think John was pretty loose. I feel like John was a lot stiffer, not as loose on his.
Why is everything about John so sexual?
Joe's trying to make it. Joe's trying to make it weird, but no. This year, I feel like we did exempt more of the random one-offs that we did on the show from voting.
You're saying for the first time in our 10-year history, we took our year-end list deadly serious?
I just have a feeling that Get Out could contend for #1
Oh.
of 2017, but I if we were gonna count Kong, I would be reluctant to put it there before I see that.
I gotta say that one's gonna be on the border because it's IMDb lists it as action adventure fantasy. So
yeah. I mean, the first Godzilla was pretty horror-y. It was very dark, and this looks a lot more kind of colorful and fun, I guess.
Jumanji.
Yeah.
we can make the argument though because Kong Skull Island's supposed to take place in the same universe as Godzilla because they're gonna make Kong versus Godzilla in 2000.
Yeah, but if we include Skull Island, then we have to include this Matt Damon movie.
Oh yeah.
Where they're fighting the lizards at the wall.
Looks so bad.
So confusing to me. I don't even understand how that makes it into a theater.
Yeah.
Or how it makes it into production.
Something that ties together Get Out and Kong is that I really enjoy normie reactions after both of those trailers. There's like this weird moment of silence and people are like, huh. Like they're just so out there, both of the trailers. I think especially like the Get Out one. I feel like if you're not prepared for that, it seems to make some people uncomfortable. I don't know why.
Well, and the other thing too is if you recognize Jordan Peele's name, I've talked to a lot of people that are like, "That's like going to be a comedy, right?" And I was like, "No,
it doesn't look like it."
I mean, it might be kind of incidentally funny, and I'm sure that there's funny parts in it. But like,
well, and I was reading an interview with him too.
To me. Oh.
Obviously, you can tell from the trailer, but you don't know how far it's going to go in this direction. But I was reading an interview with him where he says he was very much trying to, make statements on race in film and horror and stuff like that. So, political statements. So it should be pretty interesting, I think.
He had a pretty funny interview where he was talking about, I want to say it was with Seth Meyers, where he was talking about how, I don't think he's married to Chelsea Peretti, but I think they're engaged or they're dating or whatever.
I think they are.
Baby.
Yeah, they better be married.
They did make a baby, or they're in the process of making a baby. And I think Seth Meyers is saying, wait, is there a point where you have to go to her family and be like, this movie isn't about you guys, I promise. This is
oh, that's pretty funny.
That's a good point.
Oh, that is pretty true, yeah.
That would be awkward.
Yeah.
I'm excited though. I mean, I try not to get too excited about anything, but I think that we played the Gremlins clip on the show last week or 2 weeks ago. Like just that is like, I just feel like one of the things that ran through Key and Peele was like such a reverence for all of these, just all different kinds of culture and pop culture and movies and all this stuff. And you have to imagine that it's going to come through pretty high quality.
Tons of genre stuff and done in a way where you can tell it's not just passing reference. It's like you can tell they really love the stuff. Like you don't end up.
Yeah, they actually understood it.
You don't end up with that Gremlins 2 sketch unless you love that movie, or like they did.
It's a very specific joke.
They did this vampire sketch that was really funny and had a bunch of great like little nods in it and stuff. So, yeah, I mean, I'm really excited. I think I have really high expectations. So I'm hoping that it's rare these days like that I have high expectations for anything. I mean, 9 times out of 10, I'm like, well, I didn't think anything about that movie before I saw it because I literally never saw a trailer. But I've seen this trailer so many times now before other things, and it's just such a good trailer. Although this movie had a great trailer too. but we can talk about that later.
But it also just came out this week. It was just a picture, the cast picture that came out. But how about Keegan-Michael Key in Predator?
I saw that.
I
Yeah.
did not see that.
And
I did not see that.
And then Jacob Tremblay, the kid.
and the old Mother of Dragons there.
Yeah. But it's directed by Shane Black and something Decker.
Brooklyn Decker.
Oh, yes, that's it.
This director, I can't think of his name now. I've just lost my cool card, right?
We're taking it away.
Yeah, it's fine.
Turn it in at the end of the show.
Hey, Joe, you know what's
Oh.
cool?
Yeah, man.
Drinking.
Oh man, it's the coolest.
It makes you cooler. It makes things happening around you cooler. That's the coolest part of it.
It makes you cooler. It makes people look at you like you're cooler.
Yeah.
It gets you friends. It ruins families.
Yeah, it's the best. So what are we drinking tonight while we review this movie?
A Cure for Wellness. A movie, simply put, about the beauty of water and how it's going to save your life. And in honor of that, I picked a beer from the fine fellas at Sweetwater Brewing Company in Hotlanta, Georgia. And this is their Waterkeeper, which is a Hefeweizen, or white ale, as the kids might call it, which I think is a perfect type of beer because I don't know if you guys are going through the same thing, but in beautiful Chicago right now, it has been like 70 for the past week. And that is perfect drinking on the porch weather.
I've been going through that.
It's pretty, well, yeah, I mean, you're in Florida, right? Isn't that like every day?
Yeah, it's pretty much every day.
So this one, Sweetwater, I don't drink a ton of their beers, but I do actually like this one. It's a very sort of straightforward Hefeweizen. You get a lot of like banana and clove, and those flavors really come through. It comes at about 6% alcohol, so it's a little higher actually than like your typical Bud, but not much. This is definitely like a summer, like warm weather drinking beer. I think it's actually a seasonal from them, so it comes out between like June and August. So it's not something you're going to find year round, but it's very good, very refreshing. If you're mowing the lawn or just drinking on a hammock, this is the kind of beer that you're going to want to pick up. Sweetwater. Yeah, go ahead.
When it's like one of those unseasonably warm days, do you do that? Do you go drink in the hammock, like break the ice off the hammock and hop in?
Clean up the leaves.
They probably
get on there.
They probably get wet and real gross over the winter. I would feel like.
Oh, I've got it stored. Don't worry.
That's
I
smart.
take care of that thing.
Smart, Joe.
I think we've established in the past that I put hammock above family.
Right. My wife's car is outside, but the hammock is safe in the garage.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Mia's like bedroom window, my 5-year-old daughter, has been broken for like 3 months, but those hammocks, those are safe. Sweetwaterbrew.com is their website, and check it out.
I can't believe with that great intro and tie into water that you didn't go with something like Coors Light.
Could have been. I think I've actually done that before.
Thank you for that,
But yeah,
Joe.
I'm done, Eric. Okay.
That is the beer recommendation you get every week here on the show. Amazing. Incredible. Joe.
Thanks, buddy.
Let's take a quick break so that we can review A Cure for Wellness.
This is Burkittsville, formerly Blair. It is a small, quiet Maryland town, much like a small, quiet town anywhere. No more than 20 families laid their roots here over 200 years ago, many of whom remain, either on this hill or in the town below. There are an unusually high number of children laid to rest here, most of whom passed in the 1940s. Yet no one in the town seems to recall anything unusual about this time. To us, anyway. Yet legend tells a different story.
Hi, I'm Ed Sanchez, co-writer and co-director of the Blair Witch Project, among other things, and you're listening to Bloody Good Horror.
This is it, Jennifer. Your big break in TV. Fuck the prime time, bitch.
Cure for Wellness, directed by one Mr. Gore Verbinski. You may know him from such movies as The Ring. He did some of the sorry, you guys were muted. He did some of the
Oh, that's why you were talking over everybody.
Oh.
No, I literally couldn't hear. He also did The Lone Ranger, which was his last movie. Rango. He did 3 Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
Rango Unchained.
Yep, he did The Weatherman. Wasn't The Weatherman a Nick Cage thing?
Yes,
Yeah,
it
it
was.
Yeah.
Was.
Visionary. It's quite the visionary. This stars Dane DeHaan, and that's probably like the only person you'd recognize, I guess. Rest of the people.
No, Jason Isaacs is pretty recognizable. He was a Malfoy.
Sure.
What?
The rest of the people, for the most part, have vaguely Nordic-sounding names. So
At the Harry Potter no cell.
yeah,
I like it.
no soul to Harry Potter. Yeah. So who wants to synopsize this? You want me to do it, or you want to do it, Mark?
Not it.
No fucking way do I want to do it.
Joe, how about you?
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah, I'm on it. A Cure for Wellness starts off with a fancy, well-to-do, or they were like investment whatevers, right?
Yeah, it was
These guys?
business.
Wall Streeters.
Yeah. It was very much like Train to Busan, where he's just like, we have to sell all our stock markets.
I do business.
Yeah.
So we open up with this gentleman working very late, burning the midnight hour, and he actually has a heart attack in his office. Turns out that this sort of opens a position for our friend Dane DeHaan, who plays Lockhart at this company, and we discover that I guess the company he works for is on the verge of merging with another large company, and this is going to make them the largest investment firm or whatever the hell you want to call it in the world. The only hitch is one of the owners has disappeared to this resort in the Swiss Alps, where he's gone on sort of this health retreat and sent this sort of cryptic letter that he's not coming back and he's giving it all up and don't bother coming to look for him. So in a series of events, they decide,
they need his signature. So in other words, like, if
they need like his physical signature.
If they don't merge with this other company and sell or whatever, like something, it's going to be bad. And so they need his signature, and so they send somebody who doesn't know him to go retrieve it.
Yeah. So they sort of imply that there's been some shady happenings at the company, part of which Lockhart has been involved with. So they actually need to they pick him because they pretty much can blackmail him, the Dane DeHaan character. So they send him to bring him back so he can actually sign this paperwork. So Lockhart gets there, travels to the Swiss Alps, goes to this sort of what do they call it? Not a
it's like a spa retreat.
Sanitarium.
Yeah, there you
it's
go.
a little sanitarium-y.
So he travels there. He pretty much is planning on being there for like an hour, getting this guy, bringing him back, and then he's done with it. Turns out that guy's not around. He ends up having to spend the night, and as he's trying to leave the next day or get down to a hotel, gets into a car accident, breaks his leg. So then he's held up in this hospital now, and eventually gets admitted into their program and starts to discover that there's some weird happenings going on. There's a lot of eel play. There's I don't even know how to go into explaining like what sort of goes down, but
if you have an eel fetish, this might be for you.
This is the movie for you.
Yeah.
So a lot of it starts to play out where he's not sure if he's hallucinating. He's not sure if he's actually seeing these eels kind of swimming around him when he's submerged in water. He does eventually find the guy that he's got to bring back to sign the paperwork, but has like some very weird interactions with him. And then it starts to unfold that he has it in his head that the people running this sanitarium are, doing sort of nefarious things.
Do not Google eel fetish.
I'd rather not.
Why would you have thought that was okay to Google anyways?
Wowzers.
And I think the only other thing
surprised.
we should say is there's a younger girl that he starts interacting with, who is sort of separate from all the other patients that are there. Most of the patients there are like elderly, where she's younger and a little sort of mysterious in how she explains why she's there. You kind of just get like, she's special, and that's about it. And then the rest of the interaction is all with the guy who runs this place, whose name I don't have in front of me and I'm drawing a blank on.
Hitler.
Volmer was that his name?
Volmer, yep.
Volmer. Let's just go with that.
I think
And yeah, I don't know how far do you want me to go?
No,
here?
that's pretty much the setup, and we're going to discuss a lot of the specifics as we get into it.
Yeah.
We may spoil in the end. I think we maybe.
Oh, we
talk
have
about the
to.
ending.
Yeah, I
God,
think
we have
do.
to.
I think so.
No, that was very good, Joe. It was so good. I was so entranced by it that I forgot to play the synopsize music. So there you go.
Oh.
Mark? What did you think of this?
I will say that for the first 2 hours of this movie, I was along for the ride. Like, I wasn't really thinking about what the ending was going to be. I was just enjoying the visuals. I was enjoying trying to like take parts from it and piece it together. It's not, even in the first 2 hours that I was enjoying, the acting is not great. The writing is also not great, but it is really just beautiful. And the setting is like very intriguing. And it's really just well set up for all these kind of amazing shots, even if you don't need them, like the shot of the mom like looking through that big magnifying glass while she's talking. Like, it doesn't really, there's no like symbolism or anything. It's just like, hey, look, her eye's big through the glass, and that looks cool.
That's kind of
and
cool.
like that's kind of what the first 2 hours of this movie is. And then it takes a very sharp turn. Well, I would say a series of very sharp turns that were enough to just like totally ruin the movie for me in terms of recommending it for other people, if only because like 2.5 hours is a huge thing to ask of someone to sit through a movie. And it's not like I need to love every movie that's super long, but the disproportionate reaction of how much I was enjoying the sort of first 2/3 of it to how much I did not enjoy and actually was kind of angry at the ending, like just really threw me all the way off the rails.
Casey.
So I'm going to be the dissenter here and say I kind of really enjoyed this. The ending is gross. I will say that up front, and I realize that, and I understand why it kind of spoiled things for Mark, and I'm not knocking him for it.
Dude, that's not. But that's not even the. We can get to it. That's not really the problem.
We'll get to it.
It's a problem.
Let him finish.
It's not the
Can he
problem.
finish?
But from other people I've talked to, though, that the point that we will get to is a standout problem that people have had with this movie. I get it. But for me, I enjoyed this movie. We had a conversation early on about, Eric, you talked about how it felt kind of Oscar baity and stuff at the beginning, which I get. It had some really stellar shots, camera work, stuff like that. And I could see that angle. I always looked at this when I saw the commercials as some kind of Cronenberg joint. So it was kind of always B-movie a bit to me anyways. So the over-the-top B-movie ending really kind of didn't bother me, I should say. I wouldn't say I loved it, but it didn't bother me. And I also, oddly enough, did not have a problem with the runtime. I was scared to death going into this about the 2.5-hour runtime, thinking it was going to be miserable, but it moved pretty well for me. So at least the first 2 hours.
Joe.
I'm probably somewhere in between Mark and Casey. I'll say the first, like everyone has said, this movie comes in about 2.5 hours, which is a pretty big investment. And I was kind of dreading it. Although reclining seats at the theater, guys, it'll change your life.
Delightful.
But probably like an hour 45 of this, I was fine with. And then, we do take that hard turn, which I think we definitely need to talk about when we get into spoilers. Like, that's where it really kind of lost me. Like, there's a certain point where I actually felt like they kind of wrapped it up, other than like some of the breadcrumbs that they left throughout the movie, which lead up to that sort of last half hour. I felt like they really could have wrapped it up pretty well after this one scene, and we'll kind of get into it. But after that, it kind of takes a turn, and I don't think they really needed to go there or go any further. That being said, like it looked great. Like, it had some really nice visuals. I think we'll talk about, there's a lot of things in there that just didn't make sense. Like, I think they made some like cool looking visuals just for the sake of having them, which was kind of distracting. But I mean, overall, I was kind of so on this.
Yeah, it's kind of a frustrating film for me in a lot of ways. There are many moments in this movie that I would call like stunningly beautiful, like shots that are just breathtaking. And there's a lot of things going on. It's this really incredible setting at this, like, in the Swiss mountains during, I don't know, it feels like spring or early summer or something. just unbelievably beautiful, and he does this really great job of making the setting feel like a character. You know what I mean? Like the breezes and the plants and the just the water and like the way everything feels. It really it's a huge part of the movie. And even when you get to some of the creepier things, like he sets up a shot really well. And if you think back to like, I mean, I haven't seen a lot of his other films, although we did do. Oh, no, we did not do that. Anyway, I have not seen The Lone Ranger, but if you think back, if you think back to like The Ring, which we talked about a few weeks ago because of the remake, it was a really visually really great film. So there's that, but then like the plot is kind of nonsense, right? And like we were, even as we continued talking about over email today, it's like we kept going, oh yeah, wait, what about that? Or like, what about that? And like every little thread you pull at, the whole thing just falls apart. Like, and you spend 2 hours basically just being.
I can't believe you didn't say how about that.
How about that? You just you spend 2 hours, and it's like, you know, yeah, the ending for me is terrible too, but I'm not even really sold on the rest of it. As good looking as it is, at some point you're just seeing random non sequitur, weird one-off things that are kind of loosely tied together. And for me personally, I was just thinking at some point like, all right, it's at least a good looking movie. It's decently kind of eerie. Like I can wait this out and see if the ending can save it for me. And then when the ending fell flat and I really like reflected back in the rest of the movie, it's like, it's kind of stunningly bad, this script, especially when you consider like the directing wise, how solid this movie is, like how well shots are planned out, and the whole thing visually was clearly he had a plan for it from the beginning. And yet this script is like complete nonsense. Like,
right, I would argue that it's actually super well directed and horribly written.
Yeah, which is just like how you could be that talented of a director and not look at the script and be like, well, that's garbage. It's just really, and he didn't write it, somebody else did. So I just find that aspect of it really interesting.
They should go see a doctor.
You know, none of the threads really make a lot of sense. Like people, he sees people that are dead, then they're not dead, right? Like, there's eels. There's constantly eels. Like 3 separate times, there's clearly something like swimming around in his toilet in the like thing, but he doesn't look at it. He just goes and like stops the thing from moving.
It's like 4 times. Like there's like jiggling going on, and
like,
you're just like, well,
there's this constant push and pull of like, is he hallucinating or is he not? And then when the movie doesn't give you any answers, you're like, well, fuck, what was the point of anything I just saw? Like he, you know, the tank scene is huge in the trailer, right? So this early in the movie, they stick him in the tank scene. They're like, oh, you know, it's gonna pull the toxins out, and you know, that's good, toxins. But like, it's gonna make you hallucinate or something probably. So he's in the tube,
Titans and shit,
and he's having like flashbacks to his childhood. And then we see eels in the water, and he's freaking out. And then for some reason, the guy who's supposed to be watching him, with his little clipboard, a nurse comes in. Zips down her top and like flops her boobs out, and he just starts like going to town on himself, ignoring Dane DeHaan, who is at this point like basically drowning in this thing. And then he panics and he loses his respirator, freaks out, you know, and then he gets out of the thing and he's yelling he's like screaming at them. He's like, what the hell's wrong with you? Like, I almost died. And they're like, oh, I'm so sorry, I don't know what happened, it must have malfunctioned. And I'm like, no, bro, you were like jerking it back here. But
well,
then,
to
like,
be fair, like, do you think they would actually tell him, like, I'm sorry, I was just pushing myself?
It's early on. It's early on.
Must have been a real awkward table read.
It's early on in the movie, right? So you think like, well, that was weird, but maybe there's something to it. And then like those 2 characters are never in the movie again. And when it's over, like literally 24 hours after the movie was over, I thought back and I was like, why the hell was that guy just like whacking off?
I mean, to be fair, a movie like The Shining, which obviously so far on the other end of the quality spectrum had weird non sequiturs too, but this movie I feel like did not earn its weird non sequiturs.
No, it doesn't. But also like, it's much clearer in The Shining what is a hallucination and what isn't.
Like, yeah, that's true.
I mean, The Shining's all about him, you know, like sort of going into madness, whereas this, like, I still don't know if some of that stuff was hallucinations or like there really were like eels swimming around.
Right, it's really not. It's really not clear. It's not clear in that they they give you like one or two scenes where it seems like it's very explicitly like hallucinations or fantasy,
Yeah.
but
Right.
don't really play with it at all and don't really confirm
Well, and actually,
what's what.
when I was going back and thinking today when we were doing the emails, like, I don't actually think he was being drugged. When you go back
I don't
and
know.
you look at the water was just the water, right? I mean, like we're literally gonna have to get into the ending like soon to even be able to talk about why this movie's insane. So
Yeah.
you know, I don't know, 2.5 hours to me. Also, like if your first name isn't Star and your last name Wars, then I do not want to see a 2.5 hour movie from you. Or like first name Stanley, last name Kubrick. Like for me, that's pretty much about it. I'm going to start a whitehouse.gov petition that no filmmaker be allowed to make a movie over 2 hours. It's
Right.
insane. And like especially when you don't have anything to say, you know what I mean? Like to me it's a movie that pretends like it's being really deep about like the meaning of love and work and modern life and the effect that it has on us, but it actually literally has nothing to say in the end.
We should also talk about Dane DeHaan is not. I don't think he's a bad actor, but he's completely miscast in this role.
He's miscast, yeah.
Like
This
they
guy,
portray him as like this not older, but like hedge funder, like big financial guy, and he looks like a teenager.
Yeah, he does. And he's
Yeah.
30. He's Mark's age. He's 30, right?
Yeah.
30.
he's also like a severe head cold way of being one of Joe's favorites, like that dude from Antiviral, I think.
Yeah,
But he
he-
does look.
Yes,
I sort of
yes.
chalk that up to like he
skinny
was
white
supposed to be
dude
getting
spectrum.
sick.
He's very
More
kind of
importantly, the girl Hannah, Mia Goth, is her name, sort of the female character in this. She apparently is only 23 and is married to one Shia LaBeouf.
Wow.
Yep.
How about that?
He
Shia
should
LaBeouf.
He should have
So
been
Joe-
in this movie.
Joe, I think you actually just called out another kind of pretty glaring problem with this movie. You said the female character from this movie.
Yeah.
It's literally it's her who is like it is, to be fair, a very important part of the story, but we'll get to why that gets weird later on. But the only other female character that was not like a nurse in this movie was this old woman who's like learning about the history of the place, and
Yeah.
she's sort of piecing together this theory about what's going on. And of course, she sort of disappears.
Which
later on.
actually, I kind of found her character like really interesting. Like I was kind of hoping that those two would get together and start doing like a buddy cop movie, but then they kind of took
Yeah.
her out.
But-
And,
Yeah, I mean, there is a cool movie in here. Like there's a really interesting kind of like, here's the history and here's what's going on now.
yeah.
And it's there. It's just like
I mean,
it just doesn't fully happen, and the
It's-
way that it happens is so far off from like
it's hard for me to not make a Shutter Island comparison, and that's a movie where even if it all didn't work, right? Like what's really ties you into that movie is that like you go on a journey of self-discovery with that Leonardo DiCaprio character, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
he comes in as an unknown, and by the end, like you have learned about that character and his sort of emotional life journey. But like there's no journey for Dane DeHaan. Like I don't know what he learned. I don't know the point of any of it. Like the boardroom people are obviously bad people, but so in other words, like all the dynamics from the final scene are kind of the same as they are in the first scene, except Dane DeHaan has just been like, oh fuck yeah, I'm gonna get on this bike and do my shit.
Mm.
But like I don't feel like I went on any kind of journey with him or anyone in the movie, really, right? Like it's just like, oh hey, weird, there's eels. Oh weird, there's more eels.
well,
Oh,
the
don't
journey thing's really important because a lot of times we talk about like, what's this movie trying to get at? Like, what is it trying to say? And it's not even super important that a movie has to say something, but it has to say something to one of the characters
I mean,
at
it's
the very least. Like, it
it's-
doesn't have to speak to us necessarily. If it's good, it will. But like, you need the main character, and he doesn't even have to be a redeemable character, but he has to have an arc that makes sense. And he doesn't really have an arc. The
No.
arc is like, I'm figuring this out. I figured it out. Well, that's fucked up. And then the
I'm
movie's
angry.
over. Like,
but
that's-
it's and it's
his arc.
literally a movie about a place where wealthy Westerners go to escape their lives, and then they realize that they don't like need all of the material wealth or whatever. But it just there's nothing done with that idea. Like, think of how, it could have been so. I don't know. I think that you could have had a lot to say about class and life and
Well,
happiness.
I mean,
and
one thing that Casey brought up in email that I thought was really interesting and really kind of hit home to me was a comparison to The Road to Wellville. And I don't know, Eric and Joe, if you guys have seen that
I
movie.
love that movie.
It's, I mean, obviously that movie is like goofy as shit, and it's like a totally different genre, but it is actually touching on a lot of the same things. I mean, if only in the like on the surface level of like, here's an alternate form to wellness, here's your escape from reality, whatever. And there's like bathhouses and shit, and like there's those similarities. But I think that's actually a more interesting story, right? Like I would have liked this movie to have been like a more horror-y, thrillery, even like as Casey said, like Cronenberg-y.
I mean, it's
Road to Wellville, and it sows those seeds very early on, but like nothing really becomes of it, which is just really disappointing.
It is pretty thrillery. I mean, I think especially once they reveal the ending, like it is a straight up genre film at some point.
Oh, definitely. I'm not saying it's not that. I'm just saying that like I'm picturing Road to Wellville with all these things like tacked onto it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is interesting that, and I think Casey brought it up in the emails too, that until I actually started watching this in the theater, I assumed that this movie took place in like the 20s or like 30s.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That shocked me too.
And it opens up and he's on a cell phone. You're like, what?
Yeah, what's happening here?
Something we
also real weird nude scenes in this movie, which is another parallel with
So
Wellville.
just uncomfortable.
Something we didn't mention was that, I was saying over email today, I was reading an email with Gore Verbinski where he was talking about the BioShock movie that he was doing. And then he was literally like weeks away from filming when basically him and the studio had a blow up about whether or not it would be PG-13. You can probably guess which side the studio was on in that argument. So the movie was ready, like it was ready to shoot.
He probably pitched that like jerk off scene, and they were like, you know what?
And he dropped it, but like
now it's not the time. You're ahead of your time. Give it another 10 years.
Like there are so many visual, to me, similarities between the type of design going on in this facility and and BioShock. It's like this 1950s kind of retro futurist thing going on. Like all the technology is oddly old looking, which makes sense in the end. But like
even the clientele is the people that founded BioShock, right?
Yeah, right.
Or the city.
Well, and like all of the people that work for him have that very creepy like look, like a lot of the people you run into in BioShock. So it's interesting.
Germans.
Like
They're Germans.
I don't know. Maybe it's a stretch, but I feel like visually he just had all that stuff in his head and was like, well, maybe this is another outlet where I can do some of this set design and stuff.
How did you guys feel?
The water too is a huge thing, obviously, in BioShock.
How did you guys feel about the escape scene into the town and like the bar and the animal doctor guy?
I thought that the
you know what's funny is the thing that stood out to me the most. My biggest problem with that scene, and they go riding this bike down the side of the mountain, go into town, and the whole time they're in town, the only thing I couldn't get out of my mind, and I know I'm a fat ass now, but how the hell are they gonna get back up that mountain on that bike?
That has nothing to do with being a fat ass. That's like you can't fucking ride a bike up a hill. That's it just doesn't work.
Not only that,
shoes.
But I challenge the physics of the two of them riding a bike downhill that way anyway, with like his big gimp like cast leg hanging off.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That girl didn't even have pegs on her bike.
Yeah, no pegs, no nothing. So like they ride down this big hill. So the town below is basically filled with like creepy, like Resident Evil 4 European townies, and like at this point, the only experience we had with them was when he was going up the hill. They were all giving him like stink eye. And I guess maybe at this point he's found out like the place was torched at some point in the past, and like that comes into play later.
Finds that out like almost. I think the cab driver tells him on the way up, so he finds that up almost.
Yeah,
right.
It keeps coming up though, and it becomes important later.
Then the lady he made friends with gave him more of the backstory.
Right. He convinces the girl to go with him, and she's like younger. She's like very oddly kind of childlike, and obviously really protected by the head dude. So you know that like it's not going to go well that he leaves with her, but. They go down, they go into a bar, they get a beer, because, like, sure. And then, so, like, actually, I really liked the random punks.
Hey, we really got to get to this doctor and get to the bottom of this right away. But first, a beer.
Yeah, I like the random punks, too. They're, like, were, like, straight from 1980s USA, I guess, maybe. I don't know if that was a point of, like, oh, hey, it's 80s here.
I don't know. They seem pretty Euro trashy to me.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's.
All
I mean,
we do
punk's
is
the-
listen to
punk's the universal
Reinstein and
language,
we
bro.
drink our beers.
yeah, I think there's a lot of crossover there. But so yeah, he goes and he talks to the doctor, aka a guy who's slaughtering pigs in a barn.
He was a vet, right? Like I
he-
think they kind of
so-
showed that.
Dane DeHaan has stolen the medical records of the guy that he was going to pick up. And he sees that he's like lost all these teeth or whatever, there's dental records. He brings him the guy and he's like, why would this happen? And he goes, well, if he's otherwise healthy, dehydration could do it. And
His mouth dry.
And Dane DeHaan's like, well, that's weird because they force feed everybody water the whole time you're there like crazy. So he goes back to the bar. Now, mind you, at this point, I mean, there's
the
so
water's pee.
so much happens in this movie. It's really, I really can't remember like which specific things, but I remember thinking like at least several things have happened that have shown him that like he's trapped, he's in danger, this place is really fucked up, they won't let him go. Things have already taken a turn for the worse. And for the first time in the entire runtime of the movie since he went up the mountain, he has access to a phone. And the guy gives him the phone, he lets him make a call, and he calls work. It seems like, here's another hilarious thing, like no matter what time it is in the world, if he calls work, someone's there to answer. He doesn't say like, call my boss's cell phone, he says, call work. And like
They're
somebody's
going
there.
through a merger, Eric. They're going to be there all the time.
Sure. So
They're
anyway,
on call,
he
bruh.
gets him on the phone, and at this point, like, you know, there is some decent tension in this movie. Like, you know, it's pretty freaky. The guy can't escape. Even when he gets out to this town, it's like everyone's kind of just like a townie who wants to like murder him anyway, seemingly. So you would think he would get on this phone and immediately go, bro, I am stuck. They won't let me go. My leg is broken. Fucking save me. Come out here now. Save me. And just like yell into the phone. But instead he goes, I have a very important thing to tell you. Did he have any health problems? And the guy's like, what? Why? And he's like, did he have any health problems? Like, he's like shouting it at him. And he's trying to figure it out because he's trying to figure out why the guy lost his teeth. And this really like twisted my brain up because I'm thinking like, the only reason why you give a shit if he lost his teeth is because you're trying to figure out a vast conspiracy. Is there's something wrong here? When it's like, you already know there's something wrong. Like, you don't need to do any more movie sleuthing. It's clear there is something wrong. Just leave. Dude.
Yes.
Like, it's not worth it. I
So
don't know.
my
Like,
counter to that
to me
is-
was such like lazy script writing. Like, because it's not connected to what we've already seen happen.
My counter to that is, while they didn't do a good job explaining it this way, but this is kind of where my brain went. He's sent out there by his bosses, who they've already shown are cutthroat and nasty, because they basically tell him, you bring Pembroke back and get him to sign the papers, and we're going to blame him, or we're going to blame you. So it's cutthroat. He knows it's hardcore. He just got a promotion. He wants to climb the ranks. They've made that clear. So he gets there. He doesn't want to show weakness, and he wants to go above and beyond to impress his bosses to try and figure out what the hell is going there, and he's not going to leave Pembroke behind.
Well, it's not just that
Because
he
that's
wants
who
a
he's there to send.
promotion.
Certainly-
It's not that just that he wants a promotion. It's that he's gonna fucking go to jail. So that's. But
Right.
I
That
will.
too.
Agree, I will agree with you that under that, like understanding that, it makes total sense. And like when you're thinking about it, and when we're talking about it, that makes total sense. They don't really play that up in the movie at all. Like he never has this moment where he's like, you know, especially when they escape, right? He has this choice of like, I could definitely, I'm out of here. Like I could get out of here. And he never has that moment where he's like, well, no, I can't because I'm going to be, you know what I mean? Like he doesn't
Yeah.
wrestle with it in the movie. And I agree with you that makes sense as a motivation, but they don't use that
Well,
in the movie.
it's
That's
not-
like a,
Right, that's why
that's
I'm
a
saying
thing
they
that
didn't
we're
explain it
inferring
well.
about it.
I actually,
Yeah.
I totally agree.
'Cause-
I totally agree. Like that character motivation makes total sense, and I actually would argue that they do establish that somewhat in the movie because we see how angry he gets and how forceful he gets. But I guess my point really is just at this moment in the movie, even if he refuses to leave and he's gonna bring this guy back, you need to be like it's the first moment he has outside contact. You need to say to those people, he is being held, even if he doesn't care about his own safety, which I think he would, but he needs to say, like, he's being held against his will. You know what I mean? Like, there's something bad going on here. Like, at least say that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That moment just sort of, like, broke a lot of it for me early
Is
on.
he predisposed to tooth loss?
And then there's this whole, and then, yeah, like, what? And then there's this whole weird jukebox scene where the punk is getting a little fresh with the lady. and then they're saved, and then they go back.
Well, so here's, and now that I'm thinking about this, because we actually had a pretty lengthy, you can tell what a discussion on a movie is going to be like. We always say this by how long the email chain is. There's two movies, right? There's the movie about him, and there's the movie about her. And the movie about him is the movie that we're praising, right? Like the movie that, not totally praising, but the movie that we were kind of interested in. And the movie about her could certainly be interesting, but it's introduced way too late.
Yeah, and I think her story
there's just not enough context. Like I actually thought, because she's sort of a mystery up until this point and kind of remains a mystery throughout most of the movie. I actually kind of enjoyed that dance scene because I thought it was well framed. It was like perfectly kind of awkward. It was a little bit tense because you just knew, like they're in the bar with these townies, like something off is gonna happen, and so there's this really cool tension. But like she's just not given. If the movie's gonna be as much about her as it is about him, she needs to be given more, and she just like didn't become a thing until later in the movie, and at that point it's just really hard to kind of get on board with, and also to do in a way that's not like insane.
Well, it's because there's so much going on. Like there's so much going on, and so much of it doesn't pay off. That's like at the point where it gets kind of frustrating for me. Joe.
Yes, sir.
Do you feel like you could walk us through? First of all, I think we should lay down a pretty big spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
And Joe, do you think you can walk us through some of the reveals here that happen?
Sure. So the first big one we get is the main character. What the heck's his name? Hutchinson, whatever the hell again.
No.
So he eventually kind of discovers
that
Lockhart, there's, not so great things going on at this. He discovers that like people are actually dehydrating to the point of death and bodies are being dumped. He escapes, goes to the police. It turns out that the police are also sort of in on it, or sort of watching this place and covering things up. So he gets taken back, and the head guy there pretty much reveals what's been going on this entire time. They've been hooking up their patients to like these giant, almost they look like iron lungs, right?
Yeah.
And pretty much forcing eels down the patient's throat, because they have this whole sort of backstory that apparently when everything burned down, everybody died, but somehow these eels have been living there for like 200 years, and for whatever reason this water is keeping them alive. So this doctor has sort of perfected this process of for some reason putting eels into people and then extracting whatever juices are coming out of you at that point. Can pretty much make these vitamins that you take like, a couple drops a day, and like that's going to keep you, it doesn't keep you alive forever, it doesn't make you immortal, but it definitely slows down the aging process.
My brain is hurting just starting to recount this conversation from earlier.
It's
almost impossible to explain.
Throughout the whole movie,
I did some real shitty math in my head. I think you age at about 5% of the rate that you would.
Yeah. Throughout the whole movie, we see like certain characters have these like vitamins, they're called, with like this little vial. It's on some of the posters.
Excuse me, I think it was pronounced vitamins.
Vitamins, yeah.
Vitamin pills, yes.
So he discovers this. We see this scene, which is like pretty intense, where they're shoving this like giant tube down into his chest and pumping these eels into him. Sort of fade from that, we go back to our main character just like sitting outside, like pretty much dazed, talking to Hannah, the female character, and explaining, pretty much he looks like numb at this point. He's just like, why would anyone want to leave? His teeth are all fixed. Like, I kind of felt like that's where this movie was going to wrap up. When I was talking before, like that's actually, I would have been fine if it ended here.
Play a creepy song, let the credits roll, and you're good.
But then we take another turn where, and we should explain, there's sort of this backstory of the Baron who had this castle, was doing sort of these experiments to try and cure what we discovered was his wife's infertility. And like pretty much there's this backstory where
his wife was also his sister, right?
His wife is also his sister because he wants to keep the bloodline pure. And, apparently he was going mad. There was this whole thing. We discovered that they actually did have a child which turns out to be Hannah, who's the girl that's been parading around the institution.
We don't find this stuff you're saying out until like
this is like the last 20
10
minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
So then after everything kind of goes down, there's this plot for the head, whatever the hell his name is, who's running this place. Turns out he actually is the Baron. And now that Hannah has how do I put this, gotten
come of
her,
age.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. That means that now they can be married. So he has this sort of wedding ceremony with her, takes her down into his little creepy lab dungeon.
His like comic book movie lair.
Yeah. And then, pretty much is about to take care of his husbandly bulge, I think would be the best way to put it.
Husband's bulge.
But like it gets super, super uncomfortable. Baby Schnars comes in, sort of confronts him. There's a big fight scene. We discover that like he's actually been putting people's faces on his, so they rip it off, and there's sort of this red menace mask that he's got going on.
He's got some mud face going on.
Yeah.
He looks like Swamp Thing when he pulls his face off.
Yeah, exactly. So then there's the big fight. The place obviously catches on fire. The Baron dies. And then we sort of wrap up with little Schnars and Hannah getting on a bike, heading out, passing the heads of this company that he was working for, coming up the mountain. And there's sort of this confrontation scene, like what are you doing? Where do you think you're going? And he just kind of rides off into the night with Hannah, and that's where we're left.
So Mark,
that's the point where he realizes that it's not all worth it. That was the point.
Yeah, that was the point. Before we really get into the ending, I just have to say, like, I was just like tossing this idea around that Mark said. Like, Mark kind of perfectly summed it up when we were talking about the fact that like the lack of a character sort of journey for Dane DeHaan, and one of my huge problems with the ending is like. It's besides the tonal thing, which I'll talk about, it's like kind of an ending to a different story. Like it's an ending to a story about him and her, which is not what the movie's about. The movie's about Dane DeHaan and this executive guy, but then the big reveal and the whole blow up at the end is all about this other side story that only sort of tangentially gets weaved in the last half an hour.
Yeah.
And so you don't give a shit because you're like, what?
So here's where I got to make my pitch. And while the ending's not great, I agree, and it is disjointed, but at the same time, this whole movie smacks to me, and the ending contributes to that. And I realize this is only going to count for somebody like me who's gone too far over the deep end on this stuff, but it strikes me like a Hammer flick. There's a lot of Hammer horror flicks from the 50s and 50s and 60s that have a lot of elements that is shared with this movie, and a lot of it has to do with mad scientists. Like if you look at the Curse of Frankenstein stuff, living in a castle like that where the town hates them and they're wary of them, and somebody comes to town for some reason, some young guy becomes the big challenge against them. There's elements of Countess Dracula that had Ingrid Pitt in it. There's a lot of good horror flicks that are tied into this, and to me, seeing those elements of those movies in here, it makes the ending of this movie not feel as disjointed, and it makes it okay for me as far as the Baron goes.
But do you feel like the rest of the movie had that Hammer quality to it, like the first half of it? Because I totally see what you're saying. Like I'm not the biggest Hammer completist, but I've seen a couple, and I think I get it. I totally get it. But like
my best friend's a Hammer.
Yeah, some of my best friends are Hammer films. I didn't really get that in the beginning, and I totally get it near the end.
Yeah, it's not as strong at the beginning, but I still think there's some similarities in there, just with, like a weird American showing up at some weird, it could easily be Bavaria or somewhere in Germany or wherever, it would fit in just the same. The settings were the same. Even the disjointed nature of it is kind of the same. But yes, it's not as strong in the beginning. And like you said before, too, I think the beginning kind of carries itself better. Well, it obviously does carry itself better for like that first 2 hours, and it gets rolling enough that they don't stand out as much, probably, or maybe I wasn't looking for something to like as much.
To me,
yeah, I mean, there's two movies, right? Like to me, I feel like there's two movies, and I totally buy your interpretation.
I would say there was three movies.
Well, okay, but I buy your interpretation of the Hammer part of it.
Yeah,
but like to me, and you don't have to agree with me, but to me, it's a part of it. It's not the whole thing. It's
Well,
a part
right.
of it, and I totally get that.
And
I understand that too, and I realize not everybody's going to see it the same way I do.
To me, like watching it, this final scene, everything from like when they go down into his lair at the end, all three of them, and the rest of the movie literally could not feel like more different movies. It's like the rest of the thing is this like airy, trippy, pretentious, thrillery kind of thing, and then suddenly it's as if Gore went on vacation and they brought in fucking Lloyd Kaufman to finish the movie. It's like literally, it's like a 90s comic book movie. From the moment that his face tears and you start to go, what the fuck? Because you saw the faces earlier in the movie and you're like, what the hell's that about? And he pulls his face off. It's like the ending to a bad 90s genre movie. And it's goofy. It's goofy as hell. But then there's this like hella awkward like rape thing thrown in, which is made all the more weirder by the guy in the audience behind me who giggled to himself really creepily at like the worst possible time. But like he rips his face off like he's the Phantom of the fucking Opera or something. And like that's not the movie that we were watching. And I'm like, I literally was like mind blown. What is happening in this movie right now?
Yeah, there are some tester, I would call them tester moments throughout the movie to kind of we talked about the self-pleasuring scene as one. I would count the gutting of the deer as another, like the pulling out of the teeth. There's a lot of just like really kind of stark, uncomfortable, really gross visuals throughout the movie, right? Yeah. And then you do get this really weird like Two-Face Swamp Thing, like shitty CG reveal, which trivializes what's actually happening, which is like it's a fucking rape scene, and it's like an incest scene, and it's a prolonged nude scene from a character that even if she is 300 years old, we've been told explicitly and visually that she just hit puberty, so she's like let's say 13 or 14, and this is like such a tricky thing to articulate. But the idea that this guy who was in love
also it's his daughter.
Well, okay, but I'm getting it. So this guy that sired a child with his sister. It stands to reason that he would also be the sort of person who would look at his 300-year-old but also 13-year-old daughter and be like, okay, I'm going to make a child. And it's like, that's not okay, but it's okay in this movie world. It's okay for a
bad character to do bad things.
Well,
you know,
sure, it's okay in the frame of the character, but then
it's logically sound.
But then you're making the movie, and you're like, okay, you take all your clothes off, like chain her to the bed. Also, just like show stuff. Show him like smelling his fingers and like doing
that was the point that I was like, really?
I don't ever want to hear you say that again.
But that's what I mean. I feel like to someone who doesn't care about spoilers and is also thinking about seeing this movie, just know like that's a thing that happens, and it's scenes like this in movies are so tough to talk about because you have all of these like, these are the characters' motivations, and it's not right, and that's the point that it's not right, and whatever. But I think the point that Eric's trying to make, that I'm trying to make, is that it's so poorly done, and it's so excessive, but it's just like so tone deaf and so insane and so different from everything else in the movie. I just don't think it. I don't think it has a place, and for me, like, it just left me being like, oh god.
It's completely gratuitous and not needed, because they could have kept the same plot line, the same things going, and they could have stopped it when he tied her wrist to the bed. We knew what was going to happen. You didn't have to
like tired of the train tracks. Like that's a thing, that happens in movies.
And
like
beyond all this, like
Mark, I don't know how you think love gets made, but
beyond all this, like beyond all this stuff, it's really come into focus for me though. Like the bigger problem is that, like, I don't give a shit. Like this isn't an ending to the movie that I watched. The movie that I watched should have been about like Dane DeHaan's journey and what's going on with this old CEO guy, and that movie just sort of comes to a really dissatisfying conclusion where they give you this weird little info dump that you're like, well, we tied that up, and you're sitting in the audience like, that doesn't make any
well,
fucking
and also
sense.
to clarify, your point about that is based on the fact that the first 2 hours of this movie are about that.
Right.
If this character, if this Hannah character was like, I mean, she was introduced, but if she was a major part of the first portion of the film, you could make an argument that it could be a totally different film. But it just feels way more gratuitous in the fact that the first 2 hours is like about something completely different. So they use all of this just like gratuitous, terrible stuff for like shock value, and it just doesn't.
It's just so frustrating. It's so frustrating because, like I said, like it is a gorgeous film. Like even in the end, right? Like so, everything that didn't happen in the basement layer in the end is just stunning looking. Like the fire and the building burning down, and them like escaping down the hill, and you can see the smoke and the embers. Like it just blows my mind how good this movie looks and how compared to how bad it's written. Like it's kind of unbelievable. And it's just like, again, as I look back on it, like just go watch the trailer because it has all the best images.
The trailer is fucking awesome.
Yeah, it has all the best images with a hella sweet song, and it's over in 2.5 minutes instead of 2.5 hours.
Well, the other thing,
it's funny because I was going to say, listen, now that we're talking about it, and I see Eric's point, even though it didn't bother me as much, but I see Eric's point, but it also makes me wonder. I sat through the first 2 hours of this movie thinking to myself, God, I hope this doesn't end up in like Shutter Island. Shutter Island was fine for what it was. I was afraid that they were going to do the same thing, that he was actually crazy and all of this was in his head and all this stuff back home and stuff was in his head, and it was going to be a lame ending. And I got to wonder, too, now that we've discussed it, as disjointed as that ending is, if they got all the way to the end of this movie as they're shooting it, it looks gorgeous, it looks beautiful, and they're like, oh shit, we just reshot Shutter Island. How do we change this?
But there's got to be a middle ground, right?
I mean, I think they were different enough. Like I still say they easily could have wrapped it up with him sitting on that bench, just being completely out of it. Like, and that I would have been perfectly happy with that.
They could have gone with a bleak ending, and it would have been perfectly fine.
I mean, I don't know why anyone would ever leave. Star wipe in the movie.
Yeah.
I mean,
like
honestly,
they literally got to that, and I looked at my watch, and I'm like, there's still a half an hour left. Like, where the hell are we going here?
I wouldn't be shocked to find out that was like the original ending to the movie.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
It also like made me have a much greater appreciation for like the simplicity of Shutter Island. Like it's good storytelling. Like that movie is about Leonardo DiCaprio. You know what I mean? And like his character and what's his character's past and his sort of like personal journey.
Well, yeah, he does have the journey too. So
in a way that this movie,
I'd watch him doing anything.
In a way that this movie just like didn't achieve. I gotta say too, another thing that made no GD sense to me, like Dane DeHaan. If you're the dude who runs this facility, right? Like Dane DeHaan is a security risk. Okay. Every time you put him in his room, he escapes and he slinks around and he steals shit and he goes into unauthorized areas.
I don't know.
They catch him and put him back in his room no less than 4 times, and then let him just freely roam around again and do whatever he wants.
And they obviously don't have a problem with killing people, so why don't they just whack him over the head and dump him in the pool?
Fucking kill him. Why?
I don't know if you guys have ever had to carry a toilet before, but there is no fucking way Dane DeHaan could rip a toilet off the wall.
Why? No, if you're the guy who runs this facility, what earthly reason would you have for leaving him alive when you clearly just abduct and kidnap all these people without worrying about repercussions at all?
Yeah, why didn't he just stick it down in the first place and jam heels down his throat?
It did, like, especially towards the end where they sort of reveal like that this has been going on for a long time. Like, how is Dane DeHaan the first person that's come to like investigate like what the hell's going on?
Well, not, but like at the point where he's like wandering, he's got the shovel and he's breaking into the underground facility. I'm like, why won't you just lock him in his goddamn room at night? Like, seriously.
Also, the least well hidden underground facility of all time is like literally a spire sticking out of the ground in the front lawn. Like he's the first person to be like, I wonder what's in there. And actually, when he first gets there, he sees an open fucking grate. He sees a hole, and then they decide they're gonna cover it up. That place has been around for like 300 fucking years, and now they're just deciding like, throw some cement on that hole.
And all the spooky shit in this whole facility takes place in a giant open courtyard that everybody's room faces at night, and you can see right into what's happening.
And they don't bother if you're gonna have your secret lair in the middle of your courtyard where everybody can see, and a giant fucking spire that says, "Hey, there's something fishy here." Why wouldn't you at least put a modern lock on it?
Now I'm curious.
It's not going to break with one shot of a shovel.
You know, or like a Princess Bride tree or something. You got to lean on the right way to open it up. You know? Just like,
You guys got a real Dahan problem here.
Now I'm curious who wrote this.
ugh, I don't even want to know.
There was a couple like extra writers. So
Never sent any writers hate mail before, but I feel like maybe I would.
it was written by the writer, the story guy on the Lone Ranger. I don't know.
Yep.
I haven't seen that, but
Got him.
That didn't have great reviews, so
No, it did not do well.
they. So I think we're winding down here. So I got to ask the question: what was the secret tonic? I don't understand how the eels worked.
fucking eel juice. I don't know.
Eel juice.
Guys, you didn't take biology. When you get gallons of eels poured down your throat, you secrete weird eel juice,
It's
and it
actually
makes you age at 5% the normal rate. I don't
Well,
understand what's so
eel juice.
Well, right, it's the sweat from the people, right? Because every therapy in this whole facility involves making people sweat, which we then realize like, oh, okay, I guess like they're collecting the sweat. But like why the eels are going into you and why they're feeding you the water, I don't
Yeah.
How did the
He
eels
said something
get
about.
out?
Yes, he said something about you had to
Stick you
distill
upside
it.
down and shit.
How did that not kill him? That's like unbelievable to me.
I'm gonna
They
be
said something
pooping
about
eels for the next week.
You had to distill the water because it was toxic to humans, but it wasn't toxic to the eels. So I can understand getting all these people and tricking them into drinking the water, putting them in the iron lung, sweating the juice out of them, and they get dried out. That makes sense.
Sweat the juice out of them.
But our
Sweat your eel
eternity
juice.
tinkles, as Mark so aptly put it in the email, but why the fucking eels and where did they go?
My favorite
So
thing
weird.
my
It's
favorite
like
thing
in-
today
in,
was
like, what about that? Why do they eat some people? Why do they feed some people to them and then let other people live forever?
Yeah,
Well, I think that's how they get rid of the bodies. Like they were just putting the dead bodies in there.
Right, but why did they let them die?
Well, I think they just get dehydrated.
well, they're
to the
not
point.
giving those. Yeah, that's the people they're distilling
Okay,
the juice from.
but-
They're not giving them the vitamins.
Oh, I don't
why-
understand why they get dehydrated. Don't get me wrong here.
So, but why? Okay, no, I get that, right? So, like, if they don't give some people the whatever, yeah, but why do they keep Dane DeHaan alive throughout this?
Yeah.
This whole
Well,
thing?
I
Is
think
it-
they were starting to send him down the road to getting juiced for his eternity tinkles,
Get your
I mean,
juice.
but he broke the spell somehow.
I don't know.
I really
Maybe
really
they're
like
Schnars fans as well, and they just couldn't see him.
I really like the phrase
so
eternity twinkles. Or tinkles. I also like
eternity tinkles. Yeah.
Schnars like chiming into our conversation saying being like, wow, this movie sounds confusing as fuck. Like I cannot imagine
He sent me a message halfway through this, like, should I see this? And I was like, no.
I
definitely not.
cannot imagine trying to follow our like think of the conversation we just had over email drawn out by 10 and
Oh, dear God.
and then being uninitiated and trying to follow it. Like I saw the movie and I couldn't tell you what the fuck happened. So
Oh,
all right, guys. Good Lord. This movie, A Cure for Wellness. Would you recommend it, Joe?
no, I wouldn't bother.
Casey?
I would say home video.
Mark?
Just go to the theater and buy a large popcorn and eat it by yourself instead of paying for this movie.
Yeah, I'm gonna say no. Watch the trailer. You can appreciate all the visuals. Put a
Great trailer.
find
A+ trailer.
find a nice wallpaper for your desktop. There's gonna be plenty of shots in this movie. So
Oh yeah.
there you go. All right, guys.
I didn't know that was an option to buy a large popcorn and eat it by myself instead of seeing this movie. I did both.
Yeah.
You sign up for AMC Movie Rewards, you get a free popcorn on your
Oh
bill.
my God, I get the one where I get to skip in line. I feel like a real dickhead, but I love it.
All right, fellas, that's gonna do it for A Cure for Wellness. Let's take a quick break and do some fan mail.
Exorcism is alive and well. Today, it's bigger than it's ever been.
Reverend, I need you to do an exorcism for the soul of my daughter.
Nell, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good, nothing to be nervous about.
No!
Where's Nell?
In the fire.
Shh. Do you hear that?
Let's get out of here. If you can't save my daughter's soul, I will.
You should be compelled to leave this girl.
In the name of Jesus Christ, I command thee to be gone!
Oh my God.
That isn't human.
The Last Exorcism, rated PG-13, in theaters everywhere, August 27th.
Greetings from Tromaville. This is Lloyd Kaufman, president of Troma Entertainment and creator of The Toxic Avenger. You know, folks, when we're not making those great movies like Tromeo and Juliet and Poultrygeist, Night of the Chicken Dead, the Troma team likes to kick back and listen to Bloody Good Horror, because Bloody Good Horror is the best television there is.
Send your emails to info@bloodygoodhorror.com or hit us up on Twitter at BGHorror with the hashtag AskBGH. And don't forget to pick up back episodes of the show at podcast.bloodygoodhorror.com.
And we are back.
I think we saw the last exorcism together, Eric.
We
I think
did,
that was
Joe.
our Boston date.
Memories.
Had some what did we have beforehand?
We met in the
not
parking
Avant
garage,
Pan,
the parking garage of the Fenway Regal.
We met at the
Panera
Au
Bread.
Revoir.
We had Panera Bread,
in
right?
Boston, Massachusetts. We had Panera Bread. I believe I had a side of a little Vermont mac and cheese, Joe.
I think I got the soup and salad.
Yep, and then we sat next to each other. Actually, I'm sure you had a buffer seat. You seem like a buffer seat person to me, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it was full, so yeah.
And we watched The Last Exorcism, one of my favorite ever BGH movies that we ever saw. So
That was good.
had good times.
Great memories.
info@bloodygoodhorror.com would be the email address if anybody sent us any, but we don't have any, so we're gonna move on right to Twitter.
Cool. So we use two hashtags. The first one is BGH Classics, which if you are a listener of our back episodes, which you can get at patreon.com/bloodygoodhorror if you're a patron. If you're listening to a back episode and you hear something that you think is silly and want to share with people, tweet it to us with the hashtag BGH Classics and we'll read it on the show and giggle at how funny we are. This first one is from, let's see, Skewered Head 79. Episode 245, ABCs of Death, the intro of movieguide.org.
Oh,
Nice.
So that's how far back it goes.
memories. I was surprised there's not a movie guide for the Cure for
I
Woe.
was also surprised.
Somebody probably watched it and was just like, I can't. I just.
There'd be a lot of some weird. I mean, I'd love to read it. I was real excited about it.
Upper eel nudity.
Eel penetration.
Just some smooth, soggy eels. All right, this next one is from Podcast Junkie 73. Congratulations, Mark, to getting gay married to a lady. Eric from episode 332.
Heyo.
What?
I made myself laugh from the past when I read that tweet. I was like, oh, Eric, you cad.
What does that even mean?
I believe
don't
it's just because, like, Mark, of course Mark would be getting gay married, even if it's to a lady. That's a brother joke, Joe. You wouldn't get it. It's too heady. It's too sophisticated for you, Joe.
All right,
2017, Eric. This next one also
not when I made that joke. It wasn't. That could have been 10 years ago, Mark.
332, so it was last year.
Okay. Whatever.
Yeah, Mark just got married too.
Yeah,
so.
I haven't been married that long.
I stand by it.
Next one is from Podcast Junkie 73. Actually, the next three are from Podcast Junkie 73, so buckle up. You really have to brace yourself for the greased up dingus. That was me in reference to Tom Hardy's wiener on episode 325 that follows, probably talking about Bronson.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. Let's see. Next one, also Podcast Junkie 73. We can't stop being awesome, so all I can do is withhold awesomeness until the first of the month when our bandwidth resets, episode 214.
Wow.
Oh, remember those days before Patreon when bandwidth was an issue and we weren't sure?
It's not even Patreon, it's Libsyn. So we used to be on Podomatic. Do you remember that? Podomatic.com. And their deal was the worst. It basically was like you were only allowed a certain number of downloads. So as soon as your show got popular, it was untenable because you had to pay for all that bandwidth to get downloaded.
A good presidential word.
Which is bullshit. And then the real game changer was libsyn.com, libsyn.com, and we still use them. And it's basically a storage fee. So per month, it's like Vimeo.
They don't give us a goddamn dime for it.
It's like Vimeo. It's like Vimeo or YouTube. Per month, you get to upload a certain number of megabytes, but you have as much download bandwidth as people can download. So it's like awesome. I mean, it's worth giving them props even without them paying us, Mark.
It's almost as if they've built scalable software.
It literally saved the show, because at some point you just automatic like the sort of first wave of podcast hosting sites were doing things in a way that made it really untenable for creators. So,
well, yeah, I mean, it's challenging to make money as a podcast, right? Thank goodness for Patreon, because that's the only way we've been able to do it. But
I mean, that's kind of been the story of the show. Is like we've knew what we wanted to do, but like the technology that was provided by companies just like hadn't caught up yet. Like another great example is like we've been wanting to do like singular on-demand episodes forever, and then finally like 7-8 years in, there was a company that was like, oh, we could do this, and we were using, was it Payloads or whatever? And then I mean, then like
Payloads with a Z, which definitely seemed like a poor
and then it advanced to the point with something like Patreon.
That's all.
It advanced to the point with something like Patreon. We've talked about this before, but like that type of model literally never would have even occurred to us when we started the show, because it wasn't a thing, and now it's like the thing. And so it's just I don't know. It's crazy how much it has changed in like less than 10 years.
Yeah,
that was super interesting.
Thanks, Joe.
Next one. Next one. This is actually one of my favorite quotes. I'm so glad that she sent us this. Hey, this is my boom gun, right? Shop smart, shop L place. Am I right? Joe doing classic lines from Evil Dead on episode 246.
I do remember that, actually.
Shop smart, shop L place. This is the last one from Podcast Junkie 73. Who wants to go see Spring Breakers with their mom? Sounds like a recipe for an awkward boner, if you ask me. Eric said that.
Man,
Q46.
I'm on fire in these classics.
You guys have to stop sending in these BGH classics that were said by Eric. It really pads his ego.
Yeah. Well, listen, I should stop saying so many funny things then, and then I'll stop.
Yeah, that's true. Your bandwidth is running out.
For some reason, I feel like that L Place quote from Joe was also read in like a Yuri accent, but maybe that's just like a retroactive thing in my head.
Yeah. It seems like it should be, but I don't remember for sure.
You know? That's just how, now that I don't see him all that often anymore, that's just how his voice sounds in my head.
That's probably just wishful thinking.
All right, this last BGH class is from Bomb Pop Caper. Episode 42, a BGH milestone, a voicemail from Joe. In his first appearance, Eric replies, he's got quite the voice.
He does.
Aww.
It's true. He still does.
That's
watercolor memories.
It's only gotten sexier with time.
I appreciate it. Like a fine wine.
And
even calling him with accents.
And somehow, over the last 10 years, Joe's actually grown more hair. Like,
yeah,
hair,
I guess so. I used to shave.
His hair looks
in reverse.
His hair looks better than it did then. It's incredible.
It's all that eel juice.
Put it right on the tip of your tongue.
Eternity tinkles.
Eternity tinkles. So we also accept tweets with the hashtag AskBGH. First one's from _DRXP. What other podcasts do you guys / gals listen to regularly?
And Mark?
I'll go. So
I thought Eric was getting ready to unveil something special.
Oh, I have stuff, but I was
don't
going to let you guys go
I don't listen to a ton of horror podcasts, actually, which may or may not be surprising to people that know me. I listen to a lot of You Made It Weird with Pete Holmes. I really like if you like fiction and kind of silliness, I really like Hello from the Magic Tavern and also Welcome to Night Vale are two really great podcasts. And then I listen to like all the NPR podcasts, but that's kind of what everybody does. So.
I don't listen. I go through phases. I like Doug Loves Movies when I want to listen to some. And if you guys like Disney, WDW Radio. It's the way to go.
I used to have like a rotation where like, oh, okay, it's each week I listen to an episode of these podcasts, and then I've gotten weirdly obsessive over the last couple of years where I pretty much just listen to like one and maybe two things at a time, and that's all I listen to every day, nonstop, all day. And so like right now it's like a little bit of the Giant Bombcast, but mostly this show I've been talking about the last couple of weeks called The Lapsed Fan, where they review old wrestling pay-per-views. I keep trying to get Mark to listen to it because I know he would love it, and
that sounds pretty interesting.
He just refuses to. They're really funny. Like the one dude does this really spot on.
To be clear, I'm not actively refusing to. I just said that I don't listen to a ton of podcasts anymore.
No.
So.
No, it's active.
No.
The one dude does like a really spot on Vince McMahon impression, and it's really funny because he's always just berating the other guy in the show like he's a wrestler. It's really good, and you do have to be like very specifically nerdy. I never got into like Welcome to Night Vale, but there was like last year I went through a phase with these horror fiction-y shows, and I definitely have to shout out Limetown, which to me is like one of the creepiest things I've ever heard, like regardless of medium. So I would definitely highly recommend that one. And a little bit of the Lost Tapes, but kind of went off the rails a little bit for me. That's what it's called, right? The Lost Tapes. Or is that the subtitle?
I never watched
That's
Lost.
that's the NPR, the first like NPR-y one. Like, oh, but we're horror. Casey knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I can't remember if that's the name or not, though. It's been a while.
The Black Tapes. That's the one I'm talking about. Some of that stuff is worth it, but I would recommend Limetown. That's the one.
Why do they have to be the black types, Eric? It's 2017.
I didn't make it, Mark. I'm just reporting. I report. You decide.
Cool. Casey, you got anything?
I have sadly not been listening to podcasts much at all because I'm in a phase where I'm studying a lot of geeky shit for work. So there's only so much room in that brain.
Sure.
One other random one that I go back to occasionally that's kind of neat is called You Must Remember This.
And yeah.
Yeah,
Evan, I think, suggested that to both of us. I listen to that from time to time.
This lady, and she does like these shows about like Hollywood history and like sort of with how they interact with like actual history. And she has this whole series on the Manson murders. And,
that was awesome.
That era of Hollywood, and it's like really fascinating. Her research is really well. She's good on mic. It's a good show.
It's really like they get into like the details of like Brian Wilson, and they do like whole shows on like Sharon Tate and like her backstory. Like it was really well done. Yeah, I like that a lot.
It's called You Must.
You guys actually reminded me. There's one I have listened to off and on. Last podcast on the left, and they talk about a lot about with. There's a couple. They had a series of like 3 episodes talking about one of the death cults that were out there in the 70s. That was pretty good. They get some weird stuff like that.
Haven't had a good death cult in a while.
Gotta get on that.
Although I saw a story yesterday about how somebody has a remember the Hale Bopp comet and that whole thing?
Oh yeah.
Somebody made a museum where they literally have like clothes that some of the people died in, and they put like dummies. Like it looks like the bedroom that they all like committed suicide in, and it's just like dummies laying on the beds like in the same position.
What was it? They were wearing like black Reeboks or black Nikes,
something like that. And they had like blue jumpsuits or something on, and also they showed that the website is still online and looks like
there's a Vice article about that because there's a couple people from that cult that were left behind to maintain that shit.
Heavensgate.com, complete with flashing GIFs.
Wow.
It's still up, and apparently is updated. So
there you go. Okay. This next one is from Real Zed Goat. Anyone else gutted that Rings wasn't about the video hit YouTube and bringing out the Samara-geddon across the world? I mean, it kind of was at a point.
No, but we talked about it, though. Like, that's what it kind of should have been. Instead, it was like, oh, we'd emailed it to a few people, but you're not going to see what happens.
You don't have the codec. You have to download VLC.
You could have done some really cool, trippy editing, though, with like 1,000 Samaras coming out of 1,000 different devices at once and just really like quick cutting and showing her like it could have been cool.
How do you not use Snapchat in 2017 in the Rings movie? I just don't get it. All right, next one is from Skizbot.
Right.
What part of the super fun and not at all horrible infusion process made the guests mindless murder spa lovers?
I don't know, man.
No
we
fucking
have no idea.
I can't.
No idea. It was not even touched on in any way that resembles clear in the movie. That wasn't even a sentence, but that's how much sense it made. Next one, also from Skizbot, related question. How many eels could Joe drink in one sitting?
Oh, I want to say like 2 or 3 tops.
Tops. That's where he draws the line.
Based on your past history. Okay, this next one is not a question, but I'm just going to read it just for Eric's sake. It's from Game Watch Apple. A cure for schnarsness.
There is no cure. I've looked.
Yeah. Okay, I'm not even gonna make a joke. Next one is from Nick Allman Scott. If Gore Verbinski were to remake another horror movie, which horror movie would work best with his style? None, because boo,
Well,
he
it
sucks.
looks. I mean, it looks amazing, right? At least if he remakes a good movie, there's already a script structure in place, right?
He should remake Freaked.
Sure.
There you go.
Yeah.
Or Freaks, for that matter.
Oh, Freaked is so fucking good. I love
It's
Freaked.
the most 90s shit ever. It's amazing.
I used to have nightmares about the dude with the sock face because I thought it was really scary.
Really, of all the shit in that movie, that's what you had nightmares
It's
about?
weird, man. It's like Uncanny Valley. How like that? The way they do that effect is really creepy.
I really wish I knew that. I would have terrorized you with a sock as a child. The last one is from Valley of the Goths minus the O. I like this question. What horror movie would you like to see made into a Lego movie?
Oh, jeez.
Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
The
That'd be
Thing.
the
That could
easy
be
one.
really fun.
The Thing.
I think like a Lego Alien or Predator movie would be pretty awesome.
Yeah, Alien could be really cool.
Maybe like I Spit on Your Grave or something.
Not
yeah,
Predator. That's
sure.
a stupid pick.
I
Thanks,
could
Joe.
go Friday the 13th like Eric, because Jason walking around knocking the shit out of Lego bricks would be pretty funny.
Thanks, Joe. I was dead serious with that pick. Thank you. That's a stupid pick. Get the hell out of here. Screw you.
Stupid
Not even
Predator. That's a
taking this
dumb
seriously.
pick, Mark. I can't believe you said that.
Oh, fellas.
Whatever.
Is that it, Mark?
What the fuck ever, Joe?
That'll do it.
They might actually. I would guess they might make a. They could probably make a Lego Ghostbusters.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Yes.
I'm sure people will be triggered by that. but
Dude,
they will,
hell yeah, Lego Ghostbusters. That sounds awesome.
Only if it's middle-aged men, Lego men.
Hey, they're making. We didn't even mention they're making a Castlevania show for Netflix. Who's it written by, Casey? Some like legit.
Warren Ellis.
Yeah, comic guy. It's pretty interesting.
He's a big comic guy, and he writes some fucked up shit, so it's pretty exciting.
And it's animated, which is like
Ooh
that's
la la.
it's probably the way to go.
Yeah.
Cheaper for sure. So yeah, that's interesting. Mark, what's going on at bloodygoodhorror.com?
New reviews every day. Got some lists and stuff going up. Join our book club, enter the contest, win a free book, and just follow us on Twitter, on Instagram, all over the place.
There's a book club
Everywhere.
tab on the site. Is that right? If you want to get more info on that.
There sure is. Or you can follow us on Instagram at Bloody Good Horror, and the link is in our profile.
Very cool. And don't forget, we are back live streaming on YouTube every week. If you want to find out more info on how you can get that live and in color, check out patreon.com/bloodygoodhorror. That's going to do
Live
it.
and direct.
It's going to do it for the show. Cure for Wellness. Hope you enjoyed it. Next week, get out. Not
Get out.
Not like you get out. Like it's get out.
Next week, get out. We're done.
Get out the
Get out.
movie.
Get out. Go. Get.
Can't wait. #1 horror movie of 2017. It just feels right, Joe. Feels like it's going to
All
happen.
right. Put it in now.
It's going to do it. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll talk to you next week.
Deuces.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.